Hello and welcome to our weekly Parshas Shiur with the commentary of the Alshich. The dedication for this week is the same as the dedication for last week, which is for my dear wife who got out of hospital on Sunday having had a knee replacement operation, which I don't think either of us was quite prepared for the serious traumatic medical surgical procedure that it is, constitutes the pain and all the stuff that comes afterwards. So she's still getting over this, and so I hope you'll be able to join me in offering up a little tefillah, a little prayer, and add the name of Ita, Rivka, Bas, Sima, Esther to your prayers. I would be deeply, deeply grateful. So this year is dedicated again to my wife, who is on the mend and is getting better, but every tefillah helps, as I think we know. At the same time, as we're learning and studying the works of the Alshich and in the north of Israel. Of course, he lived in Sfas, and the north of Israel, I don't know exactly when, but certainly I became, or Shul became aware of the terrible tragedy that happened in Meron tonight, with over, at the moment, 30 people confirmed to have died at the gathering for the annual yahrzeit of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, which is in Meron, not too far from Sfas where the Alshich lived. A terrible tragedy indeed. It's not just 30 people who passed away, but of course there were families and siblings and those who have been nifter have not been identified yet, and it's 30 at the moment. Nobody's quite sure what happened. A bridge collapsed, the stands, bleachers as they call in America, has collapsed. I don't know, it's absolutely awful and heartbreaking. So we can also dedicate the share for the referral of anybody who has been seriously injured or in any way injured. And of course, for the quick spiritual and emotional healing of those who've lost somebody special. And that, sadly, leads us on to this week's Parsha, as you'll see in a second. I want to share the screen with you, as I tell you every week. Oh, if you want to dedicate the Shiur, and please do, for a happier occasion, a bar mitzvah, a chasna, something nice, because this is not nice news that we're having to share tonight, then I usually put up the little card, but this is easy. Email me to yy@rabbiyyy.com, which I will repeat, yy@rabbiyyy.com. So if you email me, please, for a nice happy dedication for next week, when we should only be hearing Besoras Tovos, Besorat Tovot, good and happy news. But as I say, sadly, there is a connection between the news that I just shared with you and this week's Parsha, which is, of course, Emor. So I will now share the screen with you. Instead of me taking my usual photograph from my art scroll Chumash, I went to the Chabad website tonight and took there. They've got the whole of the Chumash online with a nice English translation, Kol HaKavod to them, which they share for free. Just dropping a hint to any other organization that might want to do the same thing. So let's share the screen and let me show you. Oh, we don't do that bit. Oh, I've got a little dancing wheel. Okay, there it is there. So here we go. So you can, we'll read this together. If at this moment you've got your Chumash ready, then of course you don't need this. If you don't, then maybe you want to take a screenshot, pause the video, take a screenshot, and then you can come back. But it is important because you'll see in a second that of course, the Alshich Shiur, the entirety of the Alshich Shiur is going to be based on the words here in Parshas Emor. So let's do the translation. You can see here in the English. Now, please don't be offended if you're Lubavitch or Chabad. Up until the last year or so, I've been arguing with the Alshich has been arguing with the translation of Rabbi Art Scroll, so he might not exactly, I haven't even looked, agree with every translation here. It's nothing personal. Okay, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, and Hashem speaks to Moshe. Okay, the Lord, if you like. Emor el Cohanim, speak to the Cohanim, Bnei Aaron, the sons of Aaron. V'amart aleim, and say to them, Lenefesh lo yitama ba'amov. Lenefesh, let none of you defile himself or a dead person amongst his people. That's a clever and good translation. No arguments. Pasuk base, ki im l'she'eroi, but for his relative. Okay, the Alshich is going to translate that differently. Hakore b'lo, who's near to him, le'imoi, la'ovi, for his mother, for his father, le'benoi, for his son, and l'bitoin, for his daughter, la'ochiv, for his brother. For them, he can. The Cohen, of course, the laws. So here is we're leaping straight into the laws of Cohanim. The whole Sedra is basically the Parsha is dealing with the various laws that apply to being a Cohen. And so here, the most famous, I think, or perhaps amongst the most famous laws of the Cohen, is that he is, or the Torah is allergic to him having any contact with a dead body. He has to keep as far away from death as is possible. There's an exception to that, and the exception is if somebody dies who is a very close relative of his, and the list we've just cited here, then that is enough to negate or put on pause the prohibition for him coming into contact with the dead body. He can for his mother, for his father, for his brother, for obviously for children, etc. And what's not stated there, either in the translation we have on the page or in the translation in the article as well, is his wife. But the Alshich, if we get to this, will say l'she'eroi. That refers to the wife. So please take a screenshot of this, and I'm now going to stop sharing, and we can see what the Alshich has to say. Actually, I'm tempted to leave it up, but maybe not. Okay, especially those who are reading it, listening to this as they're driving along in the car. I'm stopping sharing, and now you've got me. Okay, so that is the only the two. There's only two psukim that I want to look at here, and let's look at it now again through the eyes of the Alshich HaKodesh. And I think we'll have our eyes opened as we normally do. And as I've often said to you, those of us who study the Alshich, the normal reaction is when you look at his questions, why didn't I think of that? Because they're really really very obvious. But I'll go through them. That he asks here at the beginning 8 questions. We're not even going to do all 8 tonight. But anyway, let's see question number 1. El kefil oimer va'amarto. Why does it say, V'yamar Hashem al Moshe, Emor al Cohanim, say to the Cohanim, B'nai Aaron, who are the sons of Aaron, V'amarta alim, and say to them. It does say to them. So it doesn't have to repeat it, it doesn't have to say it again. So why is it I heard a buzz, I'm just wondering, is my phone here? I don't want my phone going off in the middle of the Shiur. Can't see it, hope it doesn't go off. But anyway, so why is it got Emor but Marta? They both mean say. Why does it repeat it? That's question number 1. Number 2, Ma'od, and I love these questions. It's so straightforward and so obvious. But Omra Techila says Emor el Cohanim. This is so good. I'm not going. If you've got the screenshot, if you don't, if you've got the Chumash in front of you, please, I can't resist torturing you for a few seconds and see if you can guess what the Alshich is going to say next. I'll drive you in the direction and see if you can see where he parks his analysis. But again, V'yamar Hashem al Moshe, Emor al Cohanim, speak to the Cohanim, B'nai Aaron, who the sons of Aaron, V'amar to them, and say to them, L'nefesh, for soul, lo yitamo, he should not become impure or contaminated, a dead soul, ba'amov, amongst his people. Did you get the question? Well, this is a classic Alshich observation because it appears several times in the Chumash. It starts in the plural. And suddenly and abruptly and inexplicably, it goes to the singular. Let's do that again. V'yamar Hashem al Moshe, Emor al Cohanim, to speak to the Cohanim, plural. Cohanim, plural. B'nai Aaron, the sons of Aaron, V'amarta alehem, and say to them, so plural. L'nefesh lo yitam ababo, he should not become contaminated through contact with a dead body. Suddenly it flips to the singular. The question number 2 the Alshich wants to know is why does it go from the plural? Hashem speaks to Moshe, speak to the Cohanim, and then to the singular. And of course, what he's speaking to the Cohanim is the instructions that are all of the instructions that flow all the way through the Parsha, all that comes next in the Parsha, which is all about the laws of the Cohanim. But it starts speaking to all the Cohanim, and then suddenly he's speaking to one Cohen. So that's important. Why does it say that? So that's question number 2. Number 3, Milo Yoda Kihem B'nai Aaron. And again, this is classic Alshich. He really had a sense of humor, right? Who doesn't know? So what does it say? Emor Cohanim, speak to the Cohanim, B'nai Aaron, the sons of Aaron. Oh, really? Oh, the Cohanim are the sons of Aaron, are they? Oh, I mean, you get the point. It says the Alshich, or his way of putting it, without quite the histrionics that I inappropriately probably employed there, and that is, who doesn't know that the Cohanim are the sons of Aaron? We all know that. So why does it have to say it? And as you know, if it says it and it makes no sense, because we already know it, then it has to be telling us something we don't know. Let me say that again, that's important. If it says it and we obviously already know it, then it has to be telling something we don't know. So we'll see what that is shortly. So where are we up to? That was question number 3. Question number 4. I'll see again. I'll see if you can be a Torah detective, Sherlock Holmes, Cohen, something like that. Emor Cohanim B'nai Aaron, but Amarta Alehem Lenefesh Lo Yitam Avamav. So of course we all know, as I said at the beginning, the Cohanim are not allowed to come anywhere near a dead body. So why doesn't it say a dead body? Why say for soul? Lenefesh Lo Yitam. So the Alshich says, "Become Amr Lenefesh Lo Amr Lemes," and not for a corpse. You shouldn't be contaminated through contact with a corpse. Contact with a soul? Why would you become in any way contaminated by contact with a soul? Isn't a soul a holy thing? That most holy thing in the world? Good question, no? Hey, and I think we're going to stop there. Actually, hold on. Yes, that's all we're going to do. That's okay. 4 questions. That will do us for this week. And I'm going to read to you some of the Alshich. Now, the first one in the Alshich is very. I'm trying to think the right word in English here. Well, what I'm going to tell you is that he's going to go into very deep and profoundly Kabbalistic ideas as his second point. This is non-Kabbalistic. Sometimes it's called rationalist approach, but that sounds to me pretty pejorative, dismissive. But he's making a very important life rule. Did I make that up? A life rule. He's explaining an important life rule. Why not? People make up words all the time. I just have. So he says the following things. He's maybe a cough again. He asks, why is it specifically that for the Cohanim that they have more than anybody else, specifically, told to keep away from dead bodies? Why not any Jew is warned to keep away from dead bodies? The question is difficult as well. However, Lazera Aaron, Levadam, Lehisa, Yes, Mikoli Shistram. If there's something wrong or something profoundly difficult spiritually from a Jew having contact with a dead body, it should be any Jew. Why only a Cohen? Now, when the Torah, then he says, is going to explain this whole concept, it starts off, and it's being addressed to Moshe. Moshe is the one who's going to pass these ideas across to the Cohanim, telling them exactly what the role is going to be. Then it really wants to make something very strongly clear as Moshe the teacher. Now remember, I think we may have mentioned before that of all the titles we could possibly give Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe the king, who's the king of the Jewish people, the lawgiver. I think the poets like to call him the lawgiver, and all sorts of a million things you could call him. But the ultimate title of Moshe is Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe our teacher. In other words, his legacy forever, his greatest legacy of all, is that he was the pedagogue par excellence, the educator, the teacher par excellence. So here, where did he get his instructions and how to teach from? From Hashem. And it's interesting that Shlomo Volba, in a very thin volume on the shelves just behind me, always does that. Yes, that's right. Behind me, the Zoom picture flips is reversed. There is a book by, why not show you this? The great Reb Shlomo Volba. Little book here. I don't know if you can see it. All the book's quite thick. those of you who are watching on video. Here's a tiny thin little book here. And the thin little book is called, as you can see, Zriel Obenecha Bechinoch. It's all about, well, it's all about Chinuch. And here, just a thin volume. But look what he says right at the beginning. Hachinuch hu, I didn't prepare this, so this is quite spontaneous. Hachinuch hu, Masima Rishona B'mayla, Masima Shavat Slochasa Mabitim Es Kiyam Marosho Ha'amatarosai. It is the most fundamentally important thing about about the continuation of the Jewish people. Chinuch education is a role, is a mission which is handed automatically to every father and every mother. And nobody can say, I refuse to take that mission. Mitzad Sheni, on the other hand, Kish Makabel Neged, on the other hand, chinuch is automatically, it comes with the territory of being a parent. And automatically, any parent wants to do a good job. But, says Rosh Hashanah, and I've got this bit underlined because that's the line I really wanted to get to. Can you see it underlined there? There. If I bring it back a bit, probably, yeah, there you can see it. You've got to know that chinuch, educating people, is a chochma amukah, the deepest wisdom. It's the most fundamental thing for the continuation of the Jewish people. But it's great wisdom is required in order to educate properly. And he goes on to say, I should have kept the book open for a few seconds. He goes on to say, and if you think you can acquire the greatest discipline, the greatest intellectual discipline, he's a natural. There's no such thing as a natural. Well, what I'm trying to say is there's no such thing as a natural teacher, at least in the context of you still have to learn how to do it. You have to turn to the greats like we turn to the greats in any discipline. Oh, you might become a great violinist and a great pianist and a great scientist, but you still need teachers. You still need teachers when it comes to education. So the greatest teacher of the Klal Yisrael was Moshe Rabbeinu, but where did he get his chinuch from? Hashem Yisbarach himself, the Almighty himself. And that's what the Alshich says here, that Moshe is being given instruction on how to teach the Cohanim what their role is with regards to the Jewish people. He said that, so I'm going to skip a little bit. Okay, but so when Moshe is about to teach and pass on the laws that apply to the Cohanim, then the Torah, Hashem, through the Torah, wants to make sure he does it right, that job of educating. That he shouldn't become impatient, he shouldn't become frustrated, he shouldn't become complacent. That was the word I was looking for, complacent. When he gets all the Jewish people, he teaches them all together once or twice until the idea has been conveyed. Because it is certainly the case a rabbi, and particularly the great rabbis, stand up and give a drosha, give a shiur to maybe a large group of people. Whenever I'm in Eretz Yisrael, there's a wonderful yeshiva called Medrash Shmuel. The Rosh Yeshiva is one of my personal, a friend and one of my personal, somebody I admire enormously. And he always gives me the discuss of standing up and giving a shiur. You can see these probably somewhere online. And you're standing there in front of 200 boys, and they're married. If they're married, their wives are there too behind in the women's gallery. And you're giving a shiur, and you've given it, and you hope you've done a good job, and you walk out, you've done it, right? And you hope that people have been inspired in some way by it, and it's influenced positively their lives. Inevitably, to ask me, does everybody listen to every word that you say, Rabbi Rubenstein, oh humble one, and is going to be make positive changes to their life as a consequence, as if I do? And the answer is no, but as long as some do, I feel quite good. Well, that's not good enough. So would say Rosh Hashanah, but the Alshich says it's not good enough when it comes to education. Moshe Rabbeinu is being told this message here, that when you're educating, you have to educate everyone. Not just the best, not just the greatest. I'm not going to tell you a story at all. So all spontaneous. I remember many, many years ago, I think it was either in Gateshead, Manchester, London, when I was still living in England. I was invited to attend a wedding, a bar mitzvah, something. I was sitting at a table between two very old and very dear friends whom I admire enormously. One had set up a Jewish organization, institution, many years before the other one. The other one, that's other friend of mine, Rabbi B. Rabbi A had set up an institution which had been established for 2 decades or so. Rabbi B had just set up an institution. And I was sitting between the two, and they were having a conversation. So Rabbi A, having the experience of 2 decades, said to Rabbi B, "Are you at the stage where you're able to accept only the best candidates?" To which Rabbi B said, "No, I'm not at that stage yet." No, I said to myself, Yehudi Yonah, please, for once in your life, just once in your life, keep quiet. Keep your mouth closed. And of course I did. So I said to them, forgive me asking, but what on earth is the point of an institution for the elite and for the very best? The very best don't need you and don't need me. They're going to do it on their own anyway. Surely real achievement, real excitement in education as an educator is to take the one who is not great and allow him or her to realize the potential that lies within themselves and unlock that and allow them to become great. The ones that are already great don't need the educators in a very real sense. The ones who don't. So that's the message essentially is being taught to Moshe Rabbeinu. Here says the Alshich, let me read on. And he says, and the rabbi, as we have a rabbi to teach, give a shiur, as I was mentioned before, maybe in the Yeshiva Medrash Shmuel in Yerushalayim, to 200, 300 people. But I've done my job, right? The majority will have listened, and I'm sure will have got the message. Okay, I've done my job. Those who want to listen will take the message that hopefully is worthwhile listening to, and I have conveyed, and that's it, done. So to that, he says, there's one person there who's not paying attention. That's just his tough luck, and he will suffer the consequences of not sucked in the brilliance of Rabbi Rubinstein. So this pasuk is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, that's wrong. The attitude is wrong. You get through to 90%, 95%, 99%. What about the 1% who didn't listen to you? You've not done your job till you've reached that 1%. If you can cause one person to get it right in the relationship with Hashem, for a Cohen to get the laws right, you've not done your job until you have made sure that he's got it right. In fact, I just was in the seminary. I teach one of the seminaries I teach in Brooklyn today, and I was handing back the results of one of the examinations, and there was a young lady who didn't do too well the last time I gave them examinations, and I remember distinctly saying, I must draw this girl aside and see what's going wrong. Why didn't she do as well as I hoped she would do? And obviously my first assumption was I hadn't taught her properly, or I hadn't prioritized her. I hadn't noticed that she was maybe struggling and not getting it. And I felt very bad about that. This exam she did very well in, but for the one that's coming in about 6 weeks' time, I'm going to make sure that I take her aside, find out from her what went wrong last time, and make sure that I correct my deficiencies as a teacher. That's the same idea here. Hashem says, if there's one who hasn't got past the test, if one who hasn't absorbed and made the lesson you're teaching part of who and what they are, then you've not done your job properly. And how is that shown? And don't think that if you just lose one, that doesn't matter, because one does matter. One does matter. There's a famous Gemara, which I did prepare before this year. This is a Gemara above the Basra and Daf Yud, Yudah Amid Beis, and it says this: Yehoda Yosef Bered Rabbi Yeshua. There was a rabbi called, who's called Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rabbi Yeshua, and it says the following interesting thing about him: Cholish Ingid. He was sick and then died. He stopped breathing, but they revived him. And when they revived him, Omli Avo, his father said to him, "My chozis, what did you see?" To which he said, Omli Olam Hovach, I saw an upside down world. Elyanim Lamata v'Tachtanim Lamada. I saw those who are considered in this world to be great, in the world to come, are considered to be rather mundane. Those here were considered to be insignificant and mundane, and heaven were considered to be very, very special. So who's to say who is important and who's not important? As I think I mentioned last week, if I was to introduce you to a fellow called Akiva, who was a shepherd and hated religious Jews so much that he wanted to strike them the way of dogs, not the way a dog strikes, which only cuts flesh, but the way a donkey strikes or bites some because it tears flesh and breaks bone. And I would say, do you think you would ever make anything of this person? You would have laughed in my face. I would have laughed as well. But he became Rabbi Akiva. Who's to say when a person is not going to, what person, who's to say which person can change the fate of the whole Jewish people? So if you're Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem is saying to him, don't think you've done your job because you 99% of the kind of got it. What about the 1%? Because that 1% might be the person who's called Akiva become Rabbi Akiva. You've got to get this right. So therefore, let's read on a little bit more. So therefore, to me, Cohanim is Mark like Heskel. So never consider nobody to be important. One Jew might be the foundation of the entire world. Cohanim is Mark like Heskel. If you look at the Heskel, in Perek Gimel and Pasuk Yud Tes, but Ata, it says Ata ki Hazoras Harosha. You Ata Hazat, he's a Hato Harosha. You have warned the Russia. And saying if you warned a Russian, he still does things wrong, then you're off the hook. But you warned him, and notice it's not Roshan, but a Russia. You went to an individual Russia and you said to this Russia, the bad person in Russia, you said to him, I'm warning you. And of course, you would do it more cleverly than that. But you've tried to go that one person back. And then he says, no, you've done your job, but it's even one we're concerned about. And so that's the same idea here. Yigam, it's a Yochid Hakbid, Bazeh, Maimon is Baruch al Moshe, Rabban Shol Cholesterol. That's what Hashem is saying here to Moshe, the teacher of the whole of the Jewish people. Emor al Cohanim, speak to the Cohanim, Derek Klal, in the plural. Remember, it's in the plural. Speak to the Cohanim in the plural, and then when you're speaking to all of them, then it goes on to the singular, which was our question. Baal Talah, Melasa, Al Yochid, and don't consider yourself. Don't be concerned. Don't think you're off the hook, and you don't be concerned about the one. Even one that's not heard or has not got the message. Go and make sure, as a teacher, you've done the job properly. Then you speak in the singular. That's why the pasuk swapped. Our question: Emor al Cohanim, speak to them in the plural. Bnei Aaron, plural, but Amarta Alehem, speak to them, and then it goes to the singular. You. So you should not become. Oh, who's it? Now he's talking to single. That's the one person, that 1% we're talking about. So that's the first point the Alshich wants to make here. It's not Kabbalistic. It's a very common sense, if you like, almost. But, not sure common sense is the right word. But it's certainly of this world of societal human society and human interaction, certainly an educational point. But the next point here is going to be Kabbalistic, and it's going to take us into, obviously, the mystical realms. And it's really, what's death all about? Why did God allow death to happen? Now, if that sounds particularly bizarre to you, I mean, why did God let death happen? Death happens to everybody. You think so? Or maybe put it differently. Was it meant to happen to everybody? So allow me to read you the Alshich as well. The Alshich here now goes on to discuss death, or the purpose of death. I know that sounds a bit bizarre, but hang in there with me. So he quotes a Medrash Rabbah, and the Medrash Rabbah says the following thing. And the Medrash Rabbah is discussing the Pora Aduma. You know, of course, of the red heifer, and then the animal slaughtered, burned. The ashes are mixed with water and used to purify anybody who's come into contact with a dead body. So the Medrash says, what's that all about? And answers the following, as you'll see in a second, as far as the Alshich is concerned, unsatisfactory explanation by offering a moshel, a parable. Hold Vlada Tinav Paltin Shel Melech. There was a maid, a servant working in the palace of the king, and her child soiled the floor, either urinated or etc. Made a mess of the floor. Omer Melech, the king, saw this and said, let the mother come and clear up the mess of her child. Remember, we're talking about the Parah Aduma. So that Medrash says, no, that's the moshel. What's the nimshel? What's the point it's trying to make? Kach tova Parah, let the cow come, but the skaper al maisa ha'egel. Let the cow come and atone for the sin of the egel, the calf, the golden calf. Aha. So in discussing the Medrash and Bamidbar Rabbah, and discussing what the purpose of the Parah Aduma is, it's in order to undo the effects of the Egel Azav. To which the Alshich says, no, it's not. That certainly isn't. What is it talking about? It's ridiculous. The Parah Aduma is not there to atone for the Egel Azav, the golden calf. It's there to expunge the effects, the negative effects, the spiritual negative effects of having contact with a dead body, of death. Somebody's in contact with a dead body, gets the ashes, the egel of the Parah Aduma sprinkled on them. So what do you mean it's here to undo the damage done by the Egel Azav? It's not. It's about all of it death. The Parah Aduma is the spiritual antidote to contact with a dead body. Rak latar esatamim. To which the Alshich now goes in, and I think I'll tell you this bit outside, into a very interesting Kabbalistic insight. And this takes us all the way back to the beginning of history and answers my question, or my tongue-in-cheek question, did we all have to die? Certainly we didn't. The original human being, Adam Rishon, was meant to live forever. Immortality was the natural state, is the natural state of human beings. Obviously a natural state that's been missing for the last few millennia, but that was the way we were designed to be. But when Adam Rishon made his mistake and listened to the whole story that we all know about, his wife who listened to the snake and was convinced by him because her husband, full circle here, had given her the incorrect information, which led her to be vulnerable to the snake, which is the Yetzer Hara's approach. Then when all that happened, then he would die. Inside every human being, therefore, there is the physical and the spiritual. The consequences of eating from the tree of knowledge was to ingest a toxin, a spiritual and physical toxin. And that toxin would mean that we would die. But we weren't meant to die. And that can never be expunged except through death. And listen to what he says. Now I'm jumping down to the bottom of the column of the Alshich here. And he says the following thing, that it's not just that the contamination was to the body, but the nefesh, the soul too. Because of course, you know that a human soul, the tumah, the ritual impurity that comes about through a dead body is not just by touching a dead body. If you touch a dead animal, you become Tommy through contact with a dead animal, but nothing more. Because an animal doesn't have a soul, an animal is only a physical being, and therefore the tumah it's no longer alive. But here, a human being is got two aspects, the physical, which has now died, but the spiritual as well. But the nefesh was also affected by the actions of Adam Rishon, and that was a continuing legacy and changed the status of human beings, we, all of us. Then our nefesh, our physical body, and our nefesh has been contaminated by negativity, by tumah, is the spiritual, is the Torah's word for this, and that can only be purged. Now, sorry, before I jump onto that, that is why a dead body, then the soul leaves the body, still attached to the body in a sense, but the soul now spreads throughout the room. You don't have to touch a body to be contaminated by it. If you're in a house, in a hospital, by the way, I mentioned hospitals at the beginning. Hospitals are always full of dead bodies. Then the soul leaves the body and spreads throughout the space, the contained space of a room, of a house, of a large building. And that spiritual contamination now is touching corners and touching areas that an animal's body would never touch. So even if you don't actually physically touch a dead human body, you can still be contaminated by it. The soul is also affected and has got negative elements from the sin of Adam Rishon. The soul can affect you to be contaminated by them too. And therefore, and this is worth reading, he says the following, listen, the gam lo yanuach, tahora nefesh malvoina, even if it were to be the case that you spend your whole life working in yourself to reach the highest spiritual levels, to undo the effects of anything you've done wrong personally and individually, and of Adam Rishon's sin, al yidei tshuva v'yisurim, through tshuva and terrible things that happen to you in your life. Kasher b'David HaMelech alei shalom. The classic example would be David HaMelech, who certainly did tshuva for the story of Bathsheba and for the results that had. Nevertheless, hamisa mechreches laman zachich chalos chayna b'chor haaretz. It would still be necessary for David HaMelech to die, which of course he did die at the age of 70. And it's very, very much like you take a metal, a precious metal, let's say gold, and it's become contaminated with other metals. If you want to get the pure metal, what you have to do is to put it back in the crucible and heat it in this container again. The impurities float to the surface, and then you can now pour the pure gold out. The grave performs that function for human beings. Our physical self and our spiritual self have been contaminated. In the grave, then what happens is, then we go back to what we were made from. And then when we come out of the grave, it's the case of Mason with the resurrection of the dead, that is left behind in the same way as the impurities are skimmed off from the molten gold after its second smelting. That's the general idea of something. So it doesn't matter that therefore everybody's going to die. Now, originally Adam Rishon wasn't going to die. It was only when he did something wrong. But there was a time in history when the Jewish people achieved that removal of the contaminant that demanded death, and that was when we stood at Mount Sinai. When we stood at Mount Sinai, we reached the level of Adam Rishon before he ate from the tree of knowledge. And once again, the Jewish people became immortal. But if the Jewish people became immortal, then why is there still death? And the answer is, of course, we made the Egel HaZohov. We made the golden calf. The golden calf brought death to the world, and we went back to the state that we're in now. We would now again have to die, so that the resurrection of the dead, the bodies would come back. Now, let's remember a question. The Medrash said, and it's talking about the Pora Aduma, is there to cure or to remedy the sin of the golden calf. And we said, no, it's not. It's there to remedy contamination with the dead body. It's the same thing. The golden calf produced death and brought it back to the world. That's the connection. That's the connection. And therefore, let's go back to our big question. And what about the Cohanim? Why are the Cohanim, why is the Torah so allergic to the Cohanim having any contact with dead bodies? And here is what the Alshich says here. So he says, now to come to answer our questions. Since the Cohanim are the ones who are closest and work in closest physical proximity to the presence of Hashem in the Beis HaMikdash or in the Mishkan before it, his predecessor, and Hu Elokim Chaim, God is the living God, so therefore we want to keep us away from death. It wants to make sure that we keep as far away from the contamination of the sin of the nochosh, of the snake from the Garden of Eden, as is physically possible. And therefore, Cohanim, close to Hashem, must be as far away from that as it can be. Oh, that's why they should be away because of their job as serving Hashem in the temple. They should have no contact with the contamination of a dead body. That's a nice answer, but there's another problem. But somebody who is cynical or somebody who takes an opposing view could say the following thing. One, okay, I get the idea. The Cohanim have to keep away from dead bodies because they come close to Hashem and offer the sacrifice in the temple in close physical proximity to the presence of God. Yeah, I get that. Two, Aaron. And of course, they're from the seed. They are the inheritors and physical genetic children of Aaron and Cohen. To which you could say, I get the idea that because they have to come close proximity to Hashem, they should keep away from dead bodies. But if they're descendants of Aaron, that would be an argument for them to have to do what they do, to have to, instead of keeping away from dead bodies, to look after dead bodies, to be the Chevra Kadisha of Klal Yisrael. Why? Because if they're the sons of Aaron and Cohen, then it's his part in the creation of the Egel Azov that brought death back to the world. So he and his descendants should be the ones to put it right again. The Chevra Kadisha should be the Kohanim. That's a reasonable argument. However, it says the Alshich, Lezeh Omar Nahofahu, to which the Torah says it's quite the opposite. And why? There was no tumor that attached itself to Aaron because of the making of the golden calf. Rather, quite the contrary. Aaron, Kodesh Hashem, Roy Lehem Lebilti Yitamim Nefesh. No, because they're the sons of Aaron, it's specifically that they shouldn't have any contact with death. Not that Aaron brought death to the world. Everything, says the Alshich, that he did was in order to prevent death coming to the world, to maintain the status and the level of the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, hoping that Moshe would come back and arrest the spiritual descent that led to the Jewish people losing the spiritual level that they were on. He did nothing wrong. So you might have thought, because of the sons of Aaron, that's why they should have contact with dead body? No. And that's why, if we go back to our previous question, it goes like this. So now we look at the Pasuk again. Emor, we speak to the Cohanim. B'nai Aaron, you're the sons of Aaron. Martalim, and say to them, and that's what you got to say. Emor, that speak to the Cohanim. And then we said, Amarto, and say to them. The first thing you've got to speak to them is to say you're the sons of Aaron. The second one is, Lenefesh lo yitam b'amov. And therefore, as a consequence of being the sons of Aaron, keep away from dead bodies. Oh, it's his fault. It's not his fault. It's not his fault. He did everything he could possibly do to stop death coming back to the world, to stop us losing that moment of immortality. You are the sons of Aaron. That's something to be proud about. That's not something to sign you up for the Chevra Kadisha. But more than that, V'amarta Aleim, and say, it says specifically, V'amarta Aleim, Lenefesh, for Lenefesh lo yitama b'amov. Lenefesh lo yitama. His soul, lo yitama b'amov, was not made impure amongst his people as a consequence of what he did at the Egel Azov. And therefore, you keep away from contact with the dead body. That's for ordinary Jews. They can be Leviim as well. Cohanim or Leviim, they can deal with that. But not Cohanim. And therefore, we put this all together, we come to a conclusion that very often, just as we said before, what seems to be a person who is not so important, the educational point we made before, somebody who doesn't seem to be so important, big deal about one person, yes, it's a big deal about one person. Because Olam Hofach Re'isi, as we saw, the rabbi who passed away in the Brom, I saw the opposite when I went to heaven. The opposite to down here, the people up there here who are considered to be great, no, down in heaven they're considered to be nothing. The people are considered to be nothing here, they are the great ones. It's lahofach, it's the opposite way of looking at it. Still, when the Alshich goes into the territory of Kabbalah, and the Alshich discusses the concept of death and how death works and how death came to the world and why we should die, which sounded a silly question before, but now we know what it means. You should know ultimately that the one whom you might point the finger at and say it's your fault, lahofachu, it's the opposite. Again, the common denominator between the two themes, the Kabbalistic and the rational, is the same. Your perspective, it's the opposite. The way that we look at things, as the Posuk famously says, quoting Hashem himself, the way the way I think, the way I see things is not the way that you see things. I consider one, even in 1,000, a class of 1,000, one who failed is ultimately a finger of guilt pointing at you, Moshe Rabbeinu, the teacher, or any teacher. Make sure you get to the weak one. When it comes to Aaron, I might have thought, you might have thought, we might have thought that it was his guilt and the Egel Azov that brought death to the world, and therefore the Cohanim should be specifically the people who deal with dead bodies. Oh no, it's quite the opposite. You're the sons of Aaron. Why did it say that? We know that. That was our question. It's Moshe being told, tell them they're the sons of Aaron. And as a consequence of that, keep away from dead bodies. And because Aaron, lo yetamamamov, he was not in any way guilty or made Tommy as a consequence of what he did at the Golden Calf. Interesting idea. Sadly, I say appropriate because of over 30 people who have been killed in Meron tonight. Well, we should only hear good news, and I look forward to sharing a Torah from the Alshich next week with you, which doesn't have any negative echoes to anything that's happening in Klal Yisrael at the time. A very, very good Shabbos.